Good morning from our global headquarters in New York. I'm Manus Cranny alongside Danny Berger. You're welcome to Bloomberg Brief. Let's set your agenda.
The 50 basis point cut stays alive. Rate traders keep the pressure on ahead of Wednesday's FOMC decision. Suspect in custody, former President Trump survives another assassination attempt just a day before early voting begins. And raising the alarm in Washington, Russia shares information with Iran on nuclear weapons, while Houthi missiles reach central Israel. Good morning, Manus.
Danny, very good morning. Stocks had their best week on the S&P 500 of 2024. The Nasdaq put on 6% in the space of 5 days. But this rotation has been barbelled. It's been out of Mag 7, let's say, from the peak into the broader market. The Russell there up 0.5%. We've gone from 4% odds. Let's have a look at the bond markets. We've gone from a 4% odds of a 50 basis point cut to 46% probability. That has driven these yields lower, and we start the week with 2 years trading through the 2-year low, giving back 36 basis points in the month of September. So the debate is rocket fueled on Friday about a 50 basis point cut. Keep an eye on dollar yen breaking 140, Danny, for the first time since 2023. What will the Fed's message be with this hallowed cut if it comes?
At the moment, rates markets are pricing in 62% odds that they move by 50 basis points. We have gone through a huge swing from CPI, where it seemed less likely than more that we would have a 50 basis point cut. It's almost as if the market has done the work for the Fed, saying if you want to move by 50, we are okay with it. Because part of the argument against 50 had been, would it be the Fed saying, we know something that you don't? The market has already moved for them. It wouldn't be a surprise anymore.
Well, and that is what was fueled on Friday. We debated this about the Wall Street Journal article. It relit the torch paper. But as Amanda Lyman from BlackRock, who was with both of us on Friday on the set, said, this is about the messaging. If you do go for 50 basis points, why are you going for 50 basis points? If you're going for 50 basis points, is that the start of a sequence then that takes you to a much deeper and more aggressive cycle? Clarity in the messaging to the zip code of 3 to 3.5%. In the neutral rate, that hallowed neutral rate.
What does it say about clarity, though, that we're left reading the tea leaves from stories from Wall Street Journal and the FT trying to decide what the Fed will do? I saw one note this morning, Manus, that said that the reason bond markets have been able to rally so much on Friday and today is because we didn't get any more articles. That was the reason, that no one from the Fed tried to leak something to a friendly journalist to push back against it. Are we in a problem if that's how they're basically trying to communicate policy?
Well, it's a sad situation. We've got retail sales, we've got industrial production as well. Maybe they will be the sword of Damocles. Let's get to Mads Pedersen. He's the CIO for Human Edge Investment Technology, weighing in on this upcoming Fed decision, writing this. They should now gradually but decisively be cutting to close to but slightly above the neutral rate, and let the economy stabilize around these levels. This would be better than trying to outsmart the economy and the markets. Mads joins us now. Mads, good morning to you. Gradually and decisively, two very different things according to the market. So the question to you is 50 basis points warranted, and would that constitute decisive?
That would constitute decisive. It's absolutely warranted. The Fed is fighting the worst thing you can be as a monetary policy authority. They're fighting a ghost of inflation, which doesn't really exist anymore. So they should just get on with it. I think it's not sure they will, but they must signal that they have understood the message, at least from the delinquencies in credit cards and the car loans, which are not really being paid as they used to. And they should be very clear that we are on the way to neutral.
How should we understand 50, if it is indeed 50, as to what you're advocating, Mads? Is it basically just a one-off large cut? Or if they go 50, does this set a precedent that they're trying to move back to neutral quickly and we could expect more?
They should, if they can anyway get their way around it, do a very clear communication that we are going to neutral at a decisive pace. Ideally, they won't do that, but ideally they should say, we have learned from our mistakes. We were too late with the hiking and we were too late with the cutting. So now we're going to position ourselves, instead of pushing the pendulum back and forth and getting the swings larger and larger, we're going to try to stabilize the economy by having a slightly contractionary monetary policy until inflation is bang where we want it. So they should just give a clear communication. It should take him 3 to 5 minutes and say, I hope all is clear, and see you in 6 weeks.
Well, you're very hopeful that they're going to do something like that. I mean, if history's anything to go by, it might be a little bit more tentative than that. But how do they best communicate that destination? Is it through the dots and the long-term rate, or is it the very short-term version of what's on the dots?
No, the dots are not helpful because they have been messing too much around with the dots, and they're run by too many different people. So it's in the wording, it's in the message which they prepare. The most important is to write it there and say where we're going, because that's the thing they have time to prepare. It's difficult for the chair to stand in front of people and explain things and get the message right. So he must be clear in the messaging which is written down. That's what we can all look at. And then I think it would be nice if some of the following speeches would weigh in with the argument being now stability is more important than trying to push the economy. The mandate is to stabilize the economy, and central banks have been destabilizing the economy. So less action and more clear direction is the way forward.
Yeah, one of the weird things this week, Mads, just for what it's worth, is that only Powell is scheduled to speak. So far, we don't have any other scheduled speakers, when usually you do have that to kind of massage the message. But here we are, Mads. We're debating 50 points for the Fed. It seems like a lot of people and markets are leaning towards it. We just got 25 from the ECB. There's a BOE decision where they're widely expected to pause their cutting. Mads, does it make sense that we're talking about such an aggressive cut from the U.S. and not from the rest of the developed world?
No, the ECB is obviously much further into policy mistake area. They should have cut 50, and they should have cut 50 at both the meetings, and they should be on the way to 2.5. And it's much more serious because, at least in the US, we have nice growth. We have the situation is not fantastic, but the situation is good. Yeah? In Europe, Germany has not been growing for 5 years, the largest economy. That's like in the US, if Texas and California and Florida, none of them were growing. Yeah? It's serious. And still, the ECB gets the messaging. I don't even know what the message was after the meeting because they were so confused. And then they do 25. It's a little bit disgraceful.
Okay, so that's a real take on the ECB. You have been consistently bullish and pro-risk. I just wonder, to what extent do you sustain that, regardless of whether it's 25 or 50 basis points here in the US?
I don't think the 25 to the 50 is important. The important is the message. So if we get a really fumbled message and a lot of people talking afterwards, we might reduce our risk stance. But at the moment, it's driven by very fundamental things. We have a fantastic recovery in earnings, which is very good. We have a very nice transition in the earnings composition in the S&P 500, and we're full risk on, and we also have some NASDAQ direct exposure. But we have a very nice transition where the technology companies have for long been the largest market cap with the platform companies. But now they are also transforming this into real earnings. And people talk back and forth about NVIDIA. But the fact is, NVIDIA has the strongest clients in the world, and they bring out products and they have free cash flow, and their clients have free cash flow, and they use it to buy. So in this sense, the same dollar spent in technology is now generating more profit. So in that way, it's a good recovery. It's also creating disinflationary forces. So it's a very nice situation, and therefore we're probably, I think, going to stay risk on at least for the next weeks or months.
Yeah, and it has been tech that's been leading things, Mads, except maybe for Friday when you had the Russell 2000 outperform. Mm-hmm. But we did have as chaotic of a political weekend as you could ever have, with the rhetoric really whipping up about different things, another attempt on the former president's life, and markets aren't budging. They did last time, Mads. You had this Trump trade put on in force. Is it that the Fed's more important, or what's going on here that markets aren't responding to a big political event?
Well, it's a sad event, obviously, but we know that there's a lot of relatively crazy people with relatively dangerous weapons in the US. We hope that they have it under control. Looks like it now. The Fed is much more important than the politics at the moment. There's a large probability that whoever wins the election will have difficulties getting things through the Congress because of the configuration there. Markets have priced in the re-emerged probability that the Democrats actually brings them the candidate, which many in Europe would favor, of course. We'll leave the decision to the Americans with all due respect. But the markets are focused on the price of money. And Trump is positive and Harris is moderated. So while her plan is not fantastic, it's not disastrous, and markets are more, the Fed is much more important for this week.
So we'll wait for Wednesday for that. Mads, thank you so much for your time this morning. Mads Pedersen of Human Edge Investment Technology. Manos, let's get to some of the other top stories now that are trending on the terminal. BMW took over 2 years to discover the extent of a braking faulty system, the fix of which is expected to cost the car maker over $1 billion. Customers and dealers began complaining about the faulty brakes in June 2022. It wasn't until October of last year that an in-depth review was put into system was launched. A profit warning last week wiped 5 billion euros off of BMW's value.
Thierry Breton, the European Union's influential internal markets chief, who has often tangled with Elon Musk's X and Meta's Instagram, resigned on Monday from the European Commission. Breton accused the Commission President Ursula von der Leyen of asking France to withdraw his name as a nominee for personal reasons that she hadn't discussed with him.
Intel shares moving higher in the pre-market trade by about 3.8%. The chip maker has officially qualified for as much as $3.5 billion in federal grants that will allow them to make semiconductors for the Pentagon. As of Friday's close, the stock had fallen 61% to year.
Coming up, the former President Trump is safe after a second assassination attempt in 2 months. More details next.
Later this hour, we're also going to be catching up with State Street's Marija Veitmane on the big week for markets. This is Bloomberg.
Former President Donald Trump is safe and unharmed following a protective incident shortly before 2 p.m. on Sunday at Trump International Golf Club at West Palm Beach. The U.S. Secret Service personnel opened fire on a gunman located near the property line, and this matter is under investigation.
That was Special Agent Rafael Barros of the Secret Service after former President Trump is now safe. The Secret Service prevented another assassination attempt at his golf course in West Palm Beach. The presidential candidate wrote in a text to supporters, "My resolve is stronger after another attempt on my life." Joining us now with more is Bloomberg's Anne-Marie Hordern. Anne-Marie, I mean, it should be said, just first off, that the Secret Service did their job this time. They protected the former president. But what does it say about this environment that this is happening yet again?
Well, there's a lot of questions that still remain as we wake up this morning after what the FBI is investigating a second assassination attempt on the former president's life. A lot of questions about a lot of beefed up security already since what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania 2 months ago. But there was a big question about, do sitting candidates, does a former president deserve maybe more protection when it comes to the perimeter of how far the Secret Service goes out? And this comes from the Palm Beach County Sheriff yesterday, briefing reporters, saying that the Secret Service was, quote, limited to the areas that they deem possible. If Trump was the sitting president, we would have had this entire golf course surrounded. What happened yesterday was, and this is what was according to the Palm Beach County Sheriff, who was walking us through exactly what took place at the golf course, which is about 15 minutes from Mar-a-Lago. You have to go over the bridge into West Palm Beach, was that the butt of the rifle was sticking through the fence, and the Secret Service will move, one agent will move to the next hole to make sure an advance work of the next hole that the former president was about to go, and spotted that rifle and then was able to engage with this individual that took off. They were able to apprehend him on I-95 in the neighboring county. But now there's going to be a lot more questions, I think, about the perimeter of this. And also, does former President Donald Trump, candidate and Vice President Kamala Harris deserve the same exact protection as sitting President Joe Biden would?
But this is also going to raise major questions around the rest of this campaign. There's, 2 attempts in a very, very short space of time is going to change the security and the ability to be out there on this campaign, or the nature of their visits on this campaign trail as well.
Well, we've seen a lot already change, even following the attack on the former president, Butler, Pennsylvania. Just 2 months ago, we saw in some campaign rallies, Trump was behind protective glass. I think a big question now, given what we heard from the Palm Beach County Sheriff, is going to be this idea of the perimeter. How would potentially that golf course had been protected if it was Joe Biden? Of course, a ton of questions are also going to be about the individual that was apprehended.
Yes.
What was the motive? They still are investigating the motive for the shooter in Butler, Pennsylvania. So a ton of questions still remain.
But before Sunday, the rhetoric around the campaign had been ones of talking about immigrants, cats and dogs, about Taylor Swift. Trump's team, I know, really wanted him to concentrate on the economy. Is this a shift from the Trump team? I mean, I guess we'll see if it shifts again after Sunday, but what they think is successful in trying to get voters out?
Well, I think definitely this is going to be a shift, at least for the foreseeable future in this week. I will note I haven't seen any changes yet to either candidate's schedule. We did see changes to the candidate's schedule following the attempted assassination in Butler. But to your point, Danny, when we look at, the remaining timeline to November 5th, the Trump campaign and individuals closest to him really want him to focus on the top two issues, which in some polls still favor him, and that's the economy and immigration.
Okay, Anne-Marie, thank you very much. That's Anne-Marie Horder on the very latest assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. Coming up on the show, a look at what else is making the headlines around the world, including a record-breaking night at the Emmys for Shogun. Context matters on Bloomberg. It's Bloomberg Brief. I'm Manish Kranji alongside Danny Berger in New York. It's a pivotal week for markets, but it's also a crucial week for Boeing. The firm is set to begin talks with the Machinists Union and the federal mediators. That's on Tuesday. For more, let's bring in Benedict Kamel. He is tracking the story. You were with us here in New York on Friday. Benny, good to see you again this morning. Pressure is mounting on Boeing. RBC say it's costing them $500 million a week if they go out full on this strike. So the pressure over the weekend, any progress over the weekend?
No real progress over the weekend. What we're going to have next is Boeing workers, the union reps and the company meeting on Tuesday with a mediator. They're bringing in somebody to sort of help them cut through the disagreements that are pretty consistent and still fairly pronounced. So really, as you say, the pressure is on Boeing to try and resolve this as quickly as they can. The clock is ticking. We were talking in this program on Friday early in the morning, and then throughout the day, we got a lot more pressure. Rating agencies came out, Fitch first, then Moody's, both saying that they might have to downgrade Boeing. And in that case, the downgrade would be dramatic because it would put them into junk territory. So to have a sort of blue chip company with $45 billion in debt suddenly in junk, that's something the company will be very keen to avoid. And the rating agencies made a point saying the strike is really what moves the needle here. So if they can get this over the line quickly and make it just a short stoppage, then fine. But if this drags out, then they're sort of heading for a world of pain.
Well, I mean, to that point, the CFO of Boeing has said that they'll do what's needed to protect their rating. Does this mean that those striking now have an even bigger upper hand, Benny? Because if not only do they face work stopping, but they face debt becoming more expensive.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, Boeing doesn't have a lot of wiggle room here. For them, it's really a balancing act trying to figure out, okay, how much can we afford to give a little bit more to workers or keep the strike going? And really it falls more into the camp of giving more to workers, so the workers do have an upper hand here. The rating agencies sort of unwittingly gave another sort of arrow in their quiver in their negotiations. It will be interesting to see just what West's comments mean. Does it mean they will have to raise equity? He didn't spell it out specifically, but that certainly is among the options. That's going to leave equity investors somewhat spooked. Stock already really under pressure this year, and that won't help. So sort of the overall picture for Boeing is pretty bleak, was bleak coming into these conversations, and after Friday hasn't improved.
Benny, we really appreciate it. Benedict Kamel there in Berlin. Okay, let's get to some front page news now. Look at what's making headlines around the world. First up in the Bloomberg this morning, Russia has been sharing nuclear secrets with Iran. That is fueling worries for both the U.S. and the U.K. Man, it's the story is that Iran has been sending missiles back to Russia in exchange for technology. Tehran says it seeks no nuclear arms, but doubts still remain there.
The FT leads with Berlin's bankers at J.P. Morgan invited UniCredit to bid for Commerzbank's stake. Now, the bankers were advising the German government on the 4.5% stake. So Berlin has repeatedly signalled to UniCredit and to the European rivals circling Commerzbank that it was not interested in selling to them.
Yeah, and this goes back to the German government saying that they were surprised that UniCredit had bought some, to which UniCredit said, we literally bought from you. How could I be surprised?
and sounds as if Orchel sounds as if he's ready to do a heck of a lot more. Now, the Emmys, you like this?
Yeah, well, Shogun won basically everything at the Emmys last night. Have you seen Shogun, Manis?
I haven't seen Shogun. I'm more Netflix and Baby Reindeer, which actually did quite well as well.
No, I'm that obnoxious person that whenever anyone talks about Shogun, I'm like, well, I read the book. Like, I'm that person. And I'm like, well, I read the book. I did really like the book. I've yet to see the show. I'm worried it's going to be gory, which is why I haven't dove in yet.
It won 18 Emmys and the best foreign language series. So it's pretty stunning and it's good to see. Now, as I say, I was lost in Baby Reindeer. Netflix got 24. Relative to Disney, underwhelming.
But you know what the crazy thing is that they had a smaller lineup and some of the categories like Best Talk Show lost nominees because there literally weren't enough shows to submit to it. So it's this whole, like, what do Emmys mean and sort of the changing and death of linear TV. Speaking of which, stay with us on this linear TV format. We're going to be speaking to State Street coming up. From our global headquarters in New York, welcome to Bloomberg Brief. Danny Berger and Manis Cranny, let's set your agenda.
The 50 basis point cut stream stays alive. Rate traders keep the pressure on ahead of Wednesday's FOMC decision. Suspect in custody, former President Trump survives another assassination attempt a day before early voting begins. And raising the alarm in Washington, Russia sharing information with Iran on nuclear weapons, while Houthi missile reaches central Israel. Danny, good morning. Countdown to the Fed.
And stocks continue their rally, the best weekly rally of the year. We are less than 1% away from all-time highs. Again, higher just barely on the future session, up 0.1%. I want to clarify something I said earlier, Manis. I'm going to blame it on the poor liquidity of this morning's market. Japan is closed for a holiday, as is China, as is South Korea. So bond trading is a little bit odd. Fed fund futures have odds of a 50 basis point hike at around 65%, but OIS, which is more liquid, is around 48%. So we're almost at even odds. Yields move lower yet again, 3 basis points. We're 3.5% on your 2-year yield, the lowest since 2022. 10-year also falling by about 1 basis point this morning. Meanwhile, we go through 140 on dollar versus the yen. 139.94 is where we stand, down 0.6%. And Manis, we also have a BOJ decision to round out the week too.
Yeah, just imagine if you get that dovish tilt from the cut and maybe the narrative from the Fed. Put that in combination maybe with no change from the BOJ, but maybe a little bit of a hawkish intimation. And you've got dollar yen trading through the 140 level. The last time we had major upset was over dollar yen and it was over the Fed guidance and the payrolls number. So this is quite a toxic combination that you could have for this week, not just for the dollar, but indeed for overall for risk.
It's a good point. It's interesting that risk isn't treating it that way, that equity markets are celebrating the coming of 50 basis points of cuts, but at the same time, they also didn't like weaker data. So is this a logical inconsistency? You just look at small caps, Manis, which rallied 2.5% on Friday after rallying 1% the day before.
But look at the journey. This time, 7 days ago, Monday morning when we came in, we were at 4% probability of a 50 basis point cut. This is using LIBOR OIS. We can all argue about what is the best measure. We were looking at Fed funds, but LIBOR OIS has gone from 4% to 46% odds of a 50 basis point cut in 5 days.
Let's talk about what that means for this risk market. Joining us now is Marija Veitmane, the Senior Multi-Asset Strategist at State Street. Marija, we are just 1% away from all-time highs. How do you understand what 50 basis points, should we get it, means for equity?
Yes, good morning, and very happy to be on the program. Equity markets like rate cuts, and I think for equity markets, I won't say it's kind of indifferent between 25 and 50. I think what for equity market is really important is kind of the whole journey that Fed is embarking on, and Fed is trying to do something that has rarely been achieved. So they're trying to engineer the soft landing, and historically, when Fed cut rates, it's more often than not we got into recession. So trying to get ahead of a cycle seems to be a good idea, and that's what market is kind of trying to kind of price in terms of 50 basis points cut.
Is that how you'd explain then why the Russell did so much better on Friday relative to the rest of the market? Do you think there's this last hope that it is the moment to rotate?
I think there's. For Russell, in my mind, it's a little bit of hope over experience. I think with Russell, market is desperate to see this big cuts is going to help small caps, and small caps really need a lot of help. The latest chart I drew is looking at profit margins in Russell. They're only like 1.5% profit margin in those companies. So yes, exactly, small caps really need very aggressive policy. For them, I worry that it might be a little bit too little, too late.
Marija, Manus made a really good point in that the setup isn't that dissimilar from the market quake we got early last month. That is a more weakening U.S. economy, not necessarily weakening, but odds higher of a 50 basis point, and a BOJ decision. And you see a strengthening of the yen again this morning, something that a huge amount of appreciation ruptured the entirety of global markets. Are you worried at all that we might get something akin to that this week, just given how monumental it is?
I think the setup is different. I think the fundamental difference is that what we look at State Street custodial database, we see that carry trade has been very crowded a month ago and has been completely unwound. And institutional investors actually, they're underweight FX carry right now, which I think is really important in terms of thinking of market reaction. So I think market is a lot better prepared for potential kind of turbulence. So that's kind of makes me a little bit more relaxed about potential outcome.
There's still the fabled $6.5 trillion sitting in money market funds. And we're having this debate whether it goes to bonds, which are already juiced, relative to equities. What's your take?
Well, you know me long enough.
But I know which side you're going to come down on. You're an equity lady.
Yeah, no. To be honest, I think equity is a really good setup right now, because what we heard from Chairman Powell, he's focused on labor market. He wants to support labor market, and as I said, he wants to get ahead of the cycle and maybe cut preemptively, but. Underlying economic activity is not, it's slowing, but it's not terrible. Profitability is slowing, but it's not terrible. And there are pockets of the market that look very strong, and you would not be surprised to hear me that they're in large cap quality names like tech, like healthcare. So that's kind of our take, is that equity market is actually in a very reasonable setup, and we had a bit of a pullback that allows investors to come back in and buy this dip.
In the land of big cap tech, Marija, there's a lot of criticism that the swings you're seeing in names like NVIDIA, one of the biggest stocks in the world, looks something like you'd see from a penny stock, dropping 5%, rallying 4%, rallying 8%, dropping another 3%. Is there a concern that this kind of volatility in the stock makes it more difficult to own, despite its future prospects of the AI promise?
Volatility is definitely not a very pleasant characteristic of an asset. But I think for us, the reason there is such volatility is because investors are really crowded in tech stocks. Yes, that has been the trade. I don't know how far you want to go. Last year, 2 years, 3, 10 years, that was a place to be. And institutional investors have built up those big positions. So any kind of uncertainty, and we have a lot of uncertainty, particularly as a cutting cycle about to start, will we avoid recession? So you sell what you have, and the largest position obviously is in technology stocks and kind of semiconductor stocks. So that induces volatility. But I'm hoping that once we get on a kind of Fed gets on the cutting cycle, we get a clear path of what they're going to do. So that will alleviate this volatility to some degree.
Marija, I'm just looking at big tech's profitability. We've gone from 50% to 36% in the second quarter. But then if you look forward, it's set to expand by 17 to 20% in the next 4 quarters. That gap that gap will maintain the premium valuation for tech, won't it, relative to the rest of the market?
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing that like really excites me on tech valuation is that this AI, no, not valuation, tech earnings, is that AI theme is quite independent of the business cycle, of rate cutting cycle, because we know that tech has very strong balance sheet, so they're less dependent on financing. And we know that companies outside technology sector want to get on the AI theme. So AI theme has been the, I mean, it's interesting. It was it was the most frequently mentioned topic in earnings season in this quarter and the previous quarter. So companies outside tech sectors, they pushing money into technology sector. And we know from kind of NVIDIA earnings report saying that the demand is stronger than supply. So there is more demand. And so the kind of earnings in the sector will continue to be strong. We need to be careful about which stocks, which sector, and like how the profit cycle is kind of distributed. But money coming from outside technology into technology, and that's what driving earnings. It's not business cycle, it's not cutting rates, it's kind of this kind of almost structural shift of money, which will support earnings for next couple years at least, and then we'll see.
Marija, thanks for joining us this Monday morning. Marija Veitmane of State Street. Coming up on the show, a second assassination attempt on the former President Donald Trump in 2 months. More on the story right here on Bloomberg Brief. Context matters.
Former President Donald Trump is safe and unharmed following a protective incident shortly before 2 p.m. on Sunday at Trump International Golf Club at West Palm Beach. The U.S. Secret Service personnel opened fire on a gunman located near the property line, and this matter is under investigation.
That was Special Agent Rafael Barros of the Secret Service. Former President Trump is safe, and the Secret Service prevented another assassination attempt at his golf course in West Palm Beach. The presidential candidate wrote in a text to supporters, "My resolve is stronger after another attempt on my life." Joining us now for more is Bloomberg's Gregory Courtney. Greg, thanks for joining us this morning. So again, the president confirming that he is well, but this raises again the risk factor around this campaign. 2 assassination attempts in 2 months. The details over the weekend. A suspect has been taken into custody. But what more do we know?
Well, the FBI is the lead investigating agency. They have arrested a man by the name of Ryan Ruth. He's a 58-year-old man from Florida who, according to authorities, was captured about a county away in a car as he was heading north on the interstate. Secret Service says that an agent who was 1 hole ahead of Trump on the golf course spotted a rifle coming out from some shrubbery, engaged with him. There were some shots fired. We're not entirely clear who fired the shots and what sequence, but it was about 300 to 500 yards from the president. It was not as close of a call, certainly, as the previous assassination attempt. And I don't want to downplay this one because any attempt is serious, but obviously the president wasn't struck. The first we heard about this, as a matter of fact, was a statement from the Trump campaign saying that the president was safe when we never knew he was in danger until details started to come out. But this is just goes to show how tense this country is in advance of an election and how common these threats are. We only hear about them when they get close, but the Secret Service investigates thousands of threats against the president and presidential candidates, in this case, a former president, every year. And there's increasing scrutiny on the Secret Service about how they provide protection to these principles.
It's really shaped the race, a race in which we've seen the cycle be so short just with the 2 candidates we have. And Greg, it's amazing to think that we're in this moment, that early and absentee voting is about to start some states this week. President Biden is going to be in Pennsylvania with that early voting beginning. How is the stage already set?
Yeah, so this, in one sense, this is the longest presidential campaign in history. Trump announced that he was running just a few days after the midterm elections 2 years ago. In other sense, it's the shortest presidential election we've ever had because on the Democratic side, President Biden bowed out and Vice President Harris got in just less than a couple months ago. We're right up on early voting. That's why we've had the two earliest debates in the history of presidential elections, one in June with Joe Biden and one last week with Kamala Harris debating Donald Trump. And part of the reason why they moved those up is, as you say, the early voting. Now, in North Carolina and Pennsylvania, we were going to begin to see early voting last week and this week. That will not begin because there's a number of court cases holding up the printing of the ballots in those states. And then once that starts, you have to request a ballot. The ballot gets mailed to you, you mail it back. So it won't be until October that we really get a sense of how much energy is behind this early voting. It's a key metric that the campaigns and we like to look at in terms of, how much excitement is there about this and where are those early votes coming from. But early voting after the pandemic of 2020 is certainly going to be a factor in this race.
If you just look back at 2020, I was just looking at the U.S. Census Bureau. They said 69% of voters nationwide cast their ballot non-traditionally by mail or before Election Day. So it shouldn't be underestimated in terms of a turnout. Let's talk about the polls. You've got the registered poll and the likely voter poll. They're showing two different things at the moment in terms of the lead for Harris. What's the latest that you've got?
Well, all the polls that were taken before the debate, we kind of have to, we're in a mode where, we have to take it one event at a time. And of course, we don't have any polling after this assassination attempt yesterday. But since the debate, I see 6 national polls. 5 of them show Kamala Harris, the vice president, with a lead of 4 or 5 points in the national polls. There's one outlier that has Trump leading in those. Now, we're at a stage of the race where you have to look at the swing state polls, and the national polls can give you kind of a sense of the direction of travel. But the fact of the matter is, with the Electoral College, a Democrat has to overperform in that national number by a good 4 or 5 points. So what that tells you is that in the swing states, this is really on a knife's edge. The vice president is leading in many of those blue wall states, Michigan, Wisconsin. It's pretty much a dead tie in Pennsylvania, in North Carolina, and then Arizona and Georgia are leaning towards President Trump. This is still a very, very, very close race.
Greg, we really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you for that. Bloomberg's Greg Corti, and you can follow Greg's coverage and the coverage from the team on U.S. elections. Bloomberg Terminal, the place to go is ElecGo. Okay, concerns are rising in the U.S. and U.K. over Russia sharing secret information and technology with Iran in exchange for ballistic missiles. The Kremlin has increased its cooperation with Iran over its ambition to obtain atomic weapons in recent months. That, according to Western officials. Joining us for more is Bloomberg senior editor Bobby Ghosh. Bobby, good to see you this morning. Thank you for joining us. This is something you've called a nightmare scenario for both the Middle East and the wider region. What is the implication of this?
Well, we've known for a while that Iran has a nuclear program. There are 3 elements, really, that add up to a nightmare scenario. First is having enough nuclear material. Now, the IAEA, which is the United Nations' nuclear watchdog, has said for a couple of years now Iran has enough nuclear material, uranium, to build several nuclear bombs. The second element is enrichment of that material towards bomb grade. And we heard only a couple of months ago from Secretary of State Blinken that Iran was 2 weeks away from reaching what is called breakout capacity, having enough material enriched to the level that is required for a nuclear weapon. The third piece, and this is the crucial piece, is having weapons technology, which is different from enrichment. That is something that the Iranians had been lagging. Now, we know Russia has previously tried to share that technology with Iran, going back 20-some years. It was caught out in a secret program back in 2002, 2003, and then it stopped. But it now looks like Russia, we are hearing officials on both sides of the Atlantic saying that Russia is now exchanging that weapons technology with Iran in exchange, in return for all the help that Iran has been giving in Russia's war in Ukraine. The Iranian drones, and more recently we've heard of Iranian missiles being shipped to Russia for use in it. Now, if the Iranians get both the material and the capacity to make a bomb, that is a game changer for the Middle East, all of its Arab neighbors, and let's not forget some of the most important trade routes in the world on both sides of the Arabian Peninsula, the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. All of that comes under enormous, it's already, as we know, very, very unstable. We've been The Houthis have fired off again missiles. They've been shooting at ships in the Red Sea. These are people who are attached to the Iranian regime. If Iran gets nuclear weapons, it becomes basically completely disruptive to all of that region and to the larger world economy.
Well, Anthony Blinken and David Lammy of the UK have said Iran's nuclear program has never been more advanced. You mentioned the Houthi rebels there and the destabilizing force at sea, but they've also raised the risk specter by launching a missile directly into Israel. Now, that's been down, but this is a pretty close call, isn't it? Very close.
It came very close to Tel Aviv. All of Israel's vaunted anti-missile sort of batteries, as well as the Iron Dome, seems to not have worked on this instance. On previous occasions when the Houthis have fired missiles, it's a 2,000-mile distance, so you can see it coming. On previous occasions, the Israelis have been able to anticipate and block and destroy these missiles before they did damage. This time, something got through. Now, the Houthis are claiming, apparently, that this is a hypersonic missile, which is a level of capacity that they have never previously shown. We know the Iranians use the Houthis as a kind of test bed for their more and more advanced technologies. We know the Iranians have claimed that they have hypersonic missile capability. If indeed this is an Iranian hypersonic missile fired from Yemen in the direction of Israel, that raises the bar in terms of the Houthi threat on Israel.
Well, it's this constant thing of, in the fog of war, there are mistakes, and that leads to larger conflicts.
Yeah.
So what is Israel's position in this as they look at Iran sharing technology with Russia, Houthis, targeting Israel more, and then you have a populace that's calling for a ceasefire? Where does Israel stand?
Well, it is an incredibly difficult set of decisions that Israel has to make. With the Houthis, the last time they fired a barrage of missiles against the Israelis, Israel then launched attacks on Houthi territory in Yemen directly, did quite a lot of damage, but clearly not enough to restrain the Houthis. So there is as you say, the risk of sort of escalation with each time the Houthis fire a missile, the Israelis attack again, and then it goes up and up and up. Everything seems to be predicated on Israel's ability to reach a ceasefire deal with Hamas. If there is a deal, the theory goes that then is an incentive for Iran and its proxies, including the Houthis and Hezbollah, to back off at least a little bit. For how long, it's impossible to know.
OK, Bobby, thank you so much. Bobby Ghosh on the very latest in the Middle East. It's Bloomberg Brief. Context matters. Good morning from New York.
Good morning on this Monday. Let's get you set up for the trading week, and it is all about central banks. The Fed will announce its rate decision on Wednesday. That's followed by a press conference from Chair Powell. Then the Bank of England decision comes on Thursday, with earnings from FedEx hitting the same day too. And then we're going to round out the week, Manus, with the BOJ. That decision comes on Friday.
Oh, toxic combo, Fed and BOJ all in 1 week. I've got some stocks for you outside the Mag 7. We got Intel bid by 2.7% this morning, qualifying for a $3.5 billion military chip deal. That's going to be good news to Pat Gelsinger. Alcoa is up 1.4% there. You've got a $1.1 billion stake position taken by a Saudi aluminium company there, Saudi aluminium plant, and DJT, which is of course Donald Trump's social media startup, extending its gains. Trump says he's not going to sell his stake in that company when the lockup period ends, Danny, but it's down to $-yen and 25 or 50 basis points. I hope we can move on aggressively from Wednesday.
Well, for those that were happy about $-yen dipping below 140, bad news for you. It's back above 140. Still strength in the yen this morning. About 48% odds that they move by 50 basis points in this market. For that, we'll have to wait for Monday. Wednesday, it's Monday today.